Thanks for joining us for today's episode of The Capitalist Investor. You've got Mark in Diamond Hands D.
Mark, what's going on, man?
What's up, brother? This is our second episode today because we were slackers and we skipped last week. See how much voice I have left. I'm running raspy here. So I want to talk the booming housing market. And I think one of the main reasons I want to talk about this, D, is the housing market's on fire. And I'm typically not one who likes to jump onto trades late. But this is a trade that I think still has plenty of room to run.
Yeah.
You know, when we look at the housing market, I tweeted this out last week, so that'd be 2 weeks ago when this thing's released. But there are 1.45 million licensed realtors in the U.S., almost 1.5 million. There's 1.03 million existing homes for sale. That's less than one per realtor, dude.
That's crazy.
Why is that? That's because there's no inventory. And you know and I know, man, like what's going on here in Cleveland with houses?
It's crazy, man. You can't even get one if you want one.
They're on the market for 2 to 3 days.
Yep.
People are buying them sight unseen in Cleveland. I could understand a Miami Beach condo sight unseen because I know what Miami Beach is like, dude.
Right.
It's beautiful.
That's awesome.
You know, but Parma, Ohio, sight unseen. I don't know about that, man. But since they're only on the market for 2 to 3 days, you better buy it sight. You better put an offer in sight unseen.
Oh, yeah.
You don't have time to go look at it, right? And then on top of that, people are offering above asking price.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I forget where I hear it, but there were, I don't know where I heard this, but there were like 70-ish offers on a house recently, and like over 60 were all cash offers. Like, what's going on with this world?
That's crazy.
It is nuts, man.
70 offers?
Yeah. So look, we've talked about this in the past. I believe on this podcast. If not on this podcast, I've definitely talked about this on TV. But if you remember, D, kind of the narrative a few years ago was the millennials don't want to own a house.
Right.
They're totally satisfied living in their parents' basement, and they're going to do that for as long as they possibly can.
Right.
I don't know if that was a knock on millennials.
It probably was.
You know, probably was. But there was probably also a survey that was included where some people actually admitted to wanting to do that. And kind of the narrative was that they grew up through the Great Recession, and they saw people get burned owning houses that they shouldn't have owned, and they didn't want to follow in those footsteps. So it was good reason. But when you're locked in your parents' basement for a year because of a COVID outbreak, dude, you want to get out.
Makes you reassess your life.
You want to get out. So we have, I believe the millennials are now the largest generation. Is that a bigger generation numbers wise than the baby boomers now?
I believe I heard that as well.
I think so.
Yep.
So now you have an entire generation of people that didn't want to own homes. Now they want to own homes.
Right.
Got to get out of mommy and daddy's basement, right? So the dynamics in the housing market are they're unbelievable, dude. Unbelievable. I mentioned what was going on here in Cleveland, Ohio. That's going on all over the country, dude. All over the country. Now, there are certain pockets like New York City.
Yeah, it's probably not good in New York City.
Probably not good there, right? But all the surrounding suburbs are probably flourishing, right? So the interesting thing to me is that we find ourselves in a situation where there's not enough houses for prospective home buyers. So how do you fill that gap? You got to build more.
Right.
And I've liked D.R. Horton for a long, long time, and I continue to buy D.R. Horton. I mean, it's trading probably at a 52-week high as I'm speaking right now. But there's a huge shortage of houses, especially in that affordable and move-up market where D.R. Horton really plays. A lot of this is because of over a decade of underbuilding.
Right.
There was not enough new home construction because people were scarred from the Great Recession.
Yep.
So the builders didn't want to build inventory that wasn't going to move. Now they got to bust their butts and they got to build a lot of houses.
And that was a great flipping market as well.
Yep.
So all of those houses that went into foreclosure, in different states of disrepair, people would buy those cheap. They'd fix them up on their own. and they'd sell them for a big profit. That was the thing to do, right after the 2008 crash.
Now, if you're in that business, good luck finding a house to buy.
No, yeah.
But honestly, how do you do it, man? Do you go old school and print a brochure and drive door to door and put it in people's mailboxes saying, I'd like to buy your house from you? I'm serious.
I think it happens.
I think
that
you
happens.
have to do that.
Yep.
Do you get random text messages sometime from people
time.
wanting to buy your house? Mm-hmm. Like, you can't afford my house. Get out of here. Stop texting me. You're not flipping my house, dude. Come on. So the real estate market, I think it presents some challenges for would-be home buyers. So I had somebody ask me on Twitter not too long ago. I think right after I posted the realtor stat, where there's roughly 40% more realtors than existing homes for sale. Mm-hmm. And his question was, if you're a young individual fresh out of college, what would you do? Would you buy a house now, or would you wait a few years? So I'm gonna let you answer that first. What's your take, D?
If I was young right out of college, I would absolutely wait as long as possible, because owning a home is not all rainbows and puppy dogs. There are costs that you just don't even think about until you move in. Obviously, if the market's good, you can sell your house quick. But if the market if you move, you get a new job. People who are young, that's often the case. Maybe they move to a new city to take a job right after college. Maybe they, met a boyfriend or girlfriend and now they're moving to a different city. It just kind of locks you down. And if the market doesn't continue to go straight up as it is right now, which I would say is going to for a while, but by the time you would need to unload that house, maybe 3-4 years down the road, it can just tie you down and it can be burdensome. So if I were young, and hopefully I'm answering this similarly to how you would, if I were young, I would rent first, and I would take that extra money and I would invest it. And then I would wait until my situation was a little bit more clear as far as where I was going to, kind of build my life before I would buy it. I wouldn't necessarily just rush to buy a house right now, after school.
I agree. And I think all right, so for the young individual who's fresh out of college, should they buy a house? Let me say something about that. If you don't have enough money in savings, not your 401k, that doesn't count, in savings, accessible savings that equal 20% of the cost of that home, you should not be buying. If you borrow that money from mommy and daddy, you didn't have enough to buy it. You should not buy.
Right.
You should wait until you are financially stable enough to make that happen. If you decide to, I don't even know what kind of loans they do on houses anymore. Do they do like 90-10s?
I don't think they do those anymore.
They don't. They don't do like, what was it, PMI or anything like that when you're above 80% loan to value?
Yep.
I don't know, man. So you should have it. Now, look, maybe you want to do a first and a second mortgage to get you to 90%. Again, I don't know if they do them anymore. I'm not a mortgage expert. But you should have 20% of the purchase price of that house in savings, excluding 401k.
Yep, absolutely. And I can tell you a quick story because you've been there before. I guess I graduated in 2003. I moved into my bachelor pad condo downtown in 2006. And everyone
that place
told
was
me,
fantastic, by the way.
Oh yeah, and everyone told me it was probably the greatest investment that I've ever made in my whole life.
Well, it was because we could stumble home from the bar drunk,
get a nice pizza or gyro and follow
gyros down there with the real deal.
Yeah,
Gyro.
They probably don't have those anymore.
I doubt it.
But anyway, so that was 2006. And 3 years later, it was probably worth 35% less than what I had paid for it. I did get a little money from mommy and daddy, but the 10% I put down total, it was upside down at that point. And that was after only 3 years. So if I wanted to move at that point, I didn't have that option, right? Unless I wanted to take a big loss, but then I would have to go back and rent again because I'd have no down payment for my next one. So I would add to what I said before. don't bite off more than you can chew as
Right.
well. I think that's a big mistake, and I get it. Hey, I was young. I was looking. As soon as I saw those condos downtown, I wanted to live there. It was a goal of mine for a long time, and I just wanted it so bad. Like I didn't really care what it took. I was going to do it. I am still renting out that condo as we sit here in 2021. So
Yeah. So look, D, I want to jump in on that condo real quick. I want to make a point that every single one of our listeners needs to be aware of.
Yep.
From a cash investment ROI standpoint, return on investment, you were down, right? But from a memories ROI standpoint,
those can't be replaced.
you can never replace those memories, dude. That was well worth it. Well worth it. That place was the real deal. All right. So here's I want to talk about two things, then we're going to wrap up here. So the first thing I want to mention are the headwinds that are facing the real estate market right now.
Yep.
Okay. So 3 major headwinds I can think of. First one is when the free money goes bye-bye, will there be excess cash that's burning a hole in people's pocket trying to buy houses? And by free money, I mean stimulus money. I mean, fat unemployment checks. When all of that stops, and I don't know when that's going to stop, but when that stops, when the free money ends, what does that do? Maybe at that point, supply and demand shifts a little bit.
Yep, I would think so.
So now you have not as much demand for the supply that's out there. Right. Second thing is interest rates. As interest rates continue to climb up, which they've been going up, and the cost of a mortgage therefore goes up, what does that do to supply and demand? And what does that do to pricing? Because now all of a sudden it costs you more to get a $300,000 house than it did, 6 months ago.
Yep.
Right.
With the rate that the government is giving out money, the inflation that we're looking at down the road, I don't think anyone's thinking about that. But you can bet your bottom dollar that a big chunk of this housing boom is based on those interest rates, which are probably the lowest that we'll ever see. Definitely the lowest we've ever seen in our lifetime. So those are going to have to go back up soon, and that's going to affect prices in the future.
Yep. Third thing is when, and I don't know the answer to this, nor do you, but when are people going to change their mindset? And maybe the answer is never, but when are people going to change their mindset away from the, if I'm stuck in my house, I'd better love the house that I live in mentality? Like that could be long lasting. That could last for the next 20 to 50 years.
Yep.
I don't think it will. I think people want to be outside.
Oh man, that was what I wanted to talk about the most on this. I don't have the answer either.
Yeah.
But it's going to happen at some point, right? I just talking with someone. Apparently, Vegas is basically at 100%.
Yes.
The costs to go to Vegas are what they were pre-pandemic. Like you and me, I'm sure a lot of people are ready to, break out of town and go on a vacation. I don't know when people will kind of shift back into the more quote unquote normal lifestyle that we had before this pandemic. But I know that when you put a bunch of money in your house, it feels great at the time. But 5 years from now, those improvements, they don't really factor into the actual purchase price.
Correct.
So,
especially when people want to customize the house to what they want.
Exactly right. So if I spent $25,000 putting a custom, movie theater in my basement, like that's sweet for when I'm there, but I'm probably not going to get a lot of, and it would probably help with the sale of the house. Don't get me wrong, but you're not getting an extra 25,000 because, especially with technology looks dated pretty much as soon as you put it in. So 5-year-old technology doesn't necessarily, translate to increasing that purchase price. So I don't know when it's going to happen, but it is definitely going to happen.
Yep.
Yeah, I would say probably by next summer, if things are, more normal, that's when I would say that I'm not sure if this housing trend is going to continue like this, which is an arrow straight up.
Yep. No doubt, man. To your point about the movie theater concept, I remember when I was shopping around for houses, and the realtor would show me houses with movie theaters and stuff like that. They try to make it sound like, oh, this is a great feature. Mm-hmm. But in the back of my mind, I was thinking, but I don't want the movie theater. I want to put a gym in here.
Right.
So it does nothing for me. But you're right. I mean, whatever money you put into a house, there's no way someone's going to like everything you've done to that house. They're going to want to make some changes. They're going to want to customize it to their preferences.
Yep.
Last thing I want to mention, D, I was listening to a podcast that focuses on Miami real estate. I was just down in Orlando. You were down in Orlando. So, I was in the mood. I'm like, I'm going to see if I should buy a place in Miami.
Nice. Let me know if you do.
I won't, dude. It's, I'm sitting poolside. I got nothing to do. So I open up Zillow and I start looking around. Like, hey, what do these things go for? So I listened to a podcast. And what I heard is that there's currently 19 months of inventory in Miami. 19 months, dude. There's 2 to 3 days of inventory in Cleveland. 19 months of inventory in Miami. They say 6 months is equilibrium.
That's interesting.
This is a buyer's market in Miami. And here's one of the key facts. The difference between the listing price and the sale price is negative 39%.
Really?
Yeah. So if your condo in South Beach is listed for $1 million, dude, it's going for $600,000-$700,000. Whereas in Cleveland, you list a house in Parma for $150,000, it goes for $200,000.
Right.
So the reason I wanted to bring that up is when people think housing, you really only think your own backyard. Mm-hmm. But we just brought up 2 different situations where things are a little funky. New York is funky. We know why New York is funky. People are moving out of the urban areas, right? But I did not expect that in Miami. I did not because all you hear about is people moving to Florida.
Right.
So I did not expect that much inventory. And maybe people are just listing stuff to see if they can get an egregious price for it when they really have no interest in selling. I don't know. Maybe that's jading the numbers.
Yep.
Maybe that's jading the numbers. Because, if I could list my house for twice what it's worth, it probably wouldn't hurt. Mm-hmm. Right? But I thought that was very interesting, and I wanted to bring to light that you've got everything going on in 48 states that are doing one thing, but then you've got New York, which is doing another, and you've got this situation in Florida, which I don't think a lot of people are aware of, and I think we should pay attention to that. Mm-hmm. That could mean that sellers have gotten a little too egregious with the amount of money they're selling, and it's going to come back to bite them.
Yep.
The market will eventually reach equilibrium again. Mm-hmm. All right.
Which is a great point of capitalism.
Exactly. Exactly. All right, so that wraps up today's show. As always, shoot us questions, info@SWP Connect. Give us 5-star rating, hit the subscribe button, and we'll talk to you soon.